Welcome back to Quantum Conversations. My name is Sarah, and today my co-host Carrie Bennett and I are going to be making these complex topics of quantum biology and circadian biology understandable to the everyday person. Thank you so much for tuning in. We ask that if you are listening on audio only, that you take a moment to leave us up to a 5-star review. And if you're on YouTube, leave us a like, leave us a comment. It will help to get the show out to more people. And before we jump into today's topic, just a quick reminder to head down to the show notes and check out my free resources as well as Carrie's free resources. We also do have courses on a variety of topics. If you are hoping to dive deeper, Carrie and I both have practitioner courses available as well for anyone who wants to begin to bring these topics to their clients and help them to implement these strategies into their daily lives. So check those out. We also have a co-taught course called Quantum Fertility that is available that allows people and practitioners to work on their fertility using these principles of quantum biology and circadian biology. Again, thank you so much for listening or watching today's show, whichever one you are doing. And let's go ahead and jump into it now. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Quantum Conversations. We're talking about mental health today.
We are. And
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people recognize the connection between light and mental health, or our indoor living and
Indoor
mental
living,
health
period. Yeah.
versus this. Like, the way that I kind of want to couch this is like, there are signals from nature that help to sync and synchronize like our various processes in our body. And then there's what's happening in our interior environments these days that are very dysregulating. And I think a lot of that is what's contributing to this rise we see in mental health challenges.
Mm-hmm. I agree 100%. It's, we talked about this in our episode where we talked about the office environment and people working indoors, of just like how dysregulating it is to the nervous system and how challenging it is on the body, period, in terms of cellular water. But the thing that we really couldn't touch on is the impact of these types of environments on mental health, and then just missing out on morning sunlight and how crucial that is for mental health. Because that's, everything I have, everything I do is because I've been able to overcome a lot of mental health challenges, and I mean, just a little brief history about where I come from is that I was put on medication at age 14, because my family life was falling apart. A lot of bad things were happening in the family. And it was the 90s and Prozac was exploding. And it's like, hey, let's do these meds and then she'll be able to like do okay in school and this, that, which it didn't. It didn't, and it wasn't, but like that was the route. And it was very accepted that if you're dealing with these mental health issues, the cure was in some sort of a medication. And so that's the way I really lived my life until my mid-30s. And I was like, I don't want to rely upon something in a bottle I don't want to manage this. Like, take this one in the morning to deal with depression. You take this one for anxiety. You take this one because you can't sleep. You take this one because it helps you with the addiction aspect that you're because you're overeating or you're wanting to smoke cigarettes or whatever. Like, and it's so common now that people have these like lists of medications and people want the ADD and ADHD diagnoses. I mean, I could just like literally rattle on about this all day. But doing this quantum and circadian piece along with supportive nutrition and nervous system regulation work has been the key for me to being off all medications and not having a sip of alcohol for 8 years, plus.
Amazing. And I think it's such a testament to this stuff. And at the same time, if you are on medications, do not get off of them without your doctor's recommendations.
No.
Okay?
No.
Right? That has to be something you work with your physician on 100%. But if you're interested in learning kind of how your body interacts with light, both artificial, which may be very dysregulating to you, driving symptoms of anxiety and depression, versus the natural light, like Sarah's talking about, that can be very supportive. That's what this is for. We really want to share with you some life-changing information here, because I've seen time and time again, the number of people who comment in my community about mood, energy, focus, anxiety, joy in response to doing these things. It's like all of a sudden there's a new lease on life, right? And I'm certain you've heard that time and time again.
100%.
And there's two key windows of time that we talk about when it comes to getting some light signaling or optimizing light signaling. And for me, the first one is that morning light, specifically UVA rise, right? There's some key things that happen during that window of time involving the neurotransmitters in our body. And so a lot of people don't realize that the way kind of chemical pathways work is that they're like cycles, right? You've got something that kind of attaches to something else, and it builds different chemicals. And a lot of the neurotransmitter pathways work this way, specifically the ones that are called involving the first building block that involves an amino acid called aromatic amino acids. There are these ring-shaped, they look like these little ring-shaped, amino acids, and they're looking to capture light that's intense enough to give them the energy to become the next chemical, or to kickstart that chemical pathway right there, that biochemical synthesis. And that light just so happens to be ultraviolet light. And ultraviolet A is the first ultraviolet light that appears in the morning and can really start to initiate this process. And so you got tryptophan, which we typically consider this kind of amino acid that makes us feel calm or groggy or sleepy, that then once it captures it through the eyes, the signaling happens through the eyes. Once that tryptophan captures that UV light, it makes it serotonin. And we've got other amino acids that can transform into dopamine, into norepinephrine. We can talk about POMC a little bit as well. So there's ways that we're designed to utilize light, specifically that ultraviolet light in the morning, to take us from the state that we're naturally designed to be in, which is kind of calm, sleepy, initially just waking up, not quite ready to start our day, to I'm focused, I'm in it, let's go. Like, what's the next thing that I need to do? And so the number of times I've seen this happen, it's astounding when people optimize UVA routes.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that was one of the most shocking things for me starting this work, was like how good I felt, and appetite regulation, all of those things. It was really astounding. And it's so simple, yet I would say 98% of people are not doing it. I mean, I don't think that's I think that's a generous number. I think it's maybe it's 99% of people are not doing it. And it's so ridiculously simple, right?
It's very simple. It's just people don't know, right?
Right.
This really significant increases we're seeing in anxiety, depression, ADD, ADHD run in parallel with the amount of time we're indoors using screens more and more, right?
Because what that does is it destroys your dopamine. Like blue light absolutely destroys your dopamine, correct?
Well, yeah, at first it actually addicts us to it, right? That blue wavelength causes us to, dopamine hit, which means we want to keep picking up this screen. But ultimately with extended use, it dysregulates dopamine, right? So it's in the same way that other addictive substances cause dopamine dysregulation, right? Like, alcohol, drugs, smoking. It's like, okay, I'm going to do it a little bit. And now I need a little bit more. Now I need a little bit more in order to feel that same dopamine pleasure. But ultimately then the blue light completely dysregulates it. But what the added effect of the blue light, not only does it addict, but then dysregulate, that blue light, specifically speaking to depression, that blue light causes mitochondrial dysfunction, which is an entirely new area of research when it comes to depression. They're realizing that circadian and mitochondrial dysfunction and circadian disruption are actually precursors to all of the symptoms that start to express themselves as depression. So we now know that light not only creates like this addictive quality that we want to keep picking it up, but it also then drives the dysfunctional pathways that we're seeing that ultimately result in depression.
Yeah. And Dr. Chris Palmer, I've had him on my show before. He's really talking a lot about mental health and mitochondrial dysfunction. And I've talked with him before. He is a really lovely, lovely man. I know there are some in the, quantum circadian space that criticize him because he doesn't talk about light at all. I think that it all goes together, right? Because he's mainly talking about a ketogenic diet and how that he's seen clinically with patients, right? So he's worked with people who have these extreme mood disorders, bipolar, schizophrenia, go into complete remission using a ketogenic diet. And he's basically tied it back to how a ketogenic diet supports the mitochondria, right? So there's
absolutely. So like the cascade that we typically see is we can get increased reactive oxygen species due to mitochondrial dysfunction that then triggers these different pathways, right? That are inflammatory, from inflammatory cytokines to low glutathione, right? And it's this cascade right there that can basically trigger not only the mitochondrial dysfunction, but then trigger enough of it to ultimately result, like we're talking about, in the symptoms of depression. And so if you can reduce reactive oxygen species, the mitochondrial dysfunction in the first place, that can go a long way. And yes, a ketogenic diet can absolutely do that, because if you're being fueled by fat, you're less likely to leak electrons through the electron transport chain, because those fat electrons enter at cytochrome 2, right? Yep. And so then
carbs are at 1.
Right, exactly. Carbs are at 1. And so your weight, and you're generating more water, more ATP, more infrared. All those things go to help to support electron tunneling. So you ultimately lower reactive oxygen species. But at the same time, if you're not, if you don't have light as an awareness here, it's only going to potentially take you so far, right? Because the mitochondria are going to continue to get inhibited by an excessive blue light toxic environment. And so it goes a long way, but I think it only touches on part of the equation right there.
Well, I mean, that's why I stayed carnivore for so long. It wasn't because I was getting a smoking hot body from carnivore, because I wasn't. I never did. It was because I had this crippling depression and anxiety, kind of like I'd mentioned in the very beginning of this conversation. And the carnivore diet was literally one of the first times in my life where all of that crazy just kind of went whoosh. I'm like, oh, wow. Like, I didn't know I was capable of feeling this clear-headed, but eventually it stopped working. And I was, if you look at some of my photos, I'm wearing AirPods. I'm on my phone all the time, trying to grow my social media and doing YouTube video, doing like what I'm doing right now. But I was doing it like all the time. I didn't understand how to be strategic with my light environment. I was never outside for sunrise. Like, why would I go outside in the morning? Like, I have kids. I have like, why would I do that? The only time I'd go outside was taking my daughter to school, walking to the car, and then all the windows were up and air conditioning is on. Sunglasses. Oh, I have so always with the freaking sunglasses all the time. And that's, I just didn't get it. I'm like, why is this not working anymore? But then luckily I found you. I found
Corey,
Dr. Corey. Yeah. At the same time. And I was like, whoa. And it was quick that I started really feeling those mental health benefits from doing this work. Like, very, very quickly. I was like, wow, okay, this is what I have been missing, and I don't eat crap. I still eat very healthy food, but I still, and I can still kind of like get away with some things that I could never get away with before. And I think it's because of the light component that supports me.
Yeah, totally. So when someone gets a wow response within a few days or a week of doing this stuff, it's because there's so much information talking about how disrupted like various genes and proteins are how disrupted they are in someone who has depression, right? So the signaling is so off. And unfortunately, it creates this vicious cycle, right? The disrupted circadian signaling, it typically leads people to go to bed at a much later time. They're going to sleep in late. When they sleep in late to try to feel better, they ultimately don't. They feel groggy. They're missing out on that UVA light in the morning. It's a very vicious cycle, and it corresponds to all the different gene pathways and protein synthesis pathways that are also disrupted, but the circadian rhythm is responsive. So it's not like you have to do this for, some people it takes a while to adapt to becoming ketogenic, right? It takes like weeks, if not a month or longer. Like it takes a long time for some people to become keto adapted. In this instance, literally we're talking about days yeah. Right, of the correct signaling, and then all of this can start to shift and regulate itself. So that's what I love so much about viewing health through the lens of light. It's not like it needs to take weeks and weeks and weeks for people to notice differences and changes. It actually can take as little. For me, it was a 3-day effect, and I was just like, whoa, this is wild. I need to know as much as I can about this, and then share it with as many people who are willing to listen.
Yeah. And there have been studies done. I mean, there've been a lot of studies done on red light and how red light, and that I think because of the way that it supports the mitochondria, how people have been treated with red and near infrared light and had significant reduction in mental health disturbances. Same thing with cold therapy. We know what cold does to the mitochondria. It pulls those respiratory proteins closer together so electrons can tunnel. It's all about how can energy move through the body and how can we make water. Cold does that. Red light therapy does that. UV light, there are some mechanisms that support mitochondria there as well. Grounding, all the things we talk about that are little to no cost.
Let's talk about grounding and earthing, and getting in nature, right? Because
there's so much. Yeah.
Like there's a lot of brainwave dysregulation that also happens when it comes to when we're talking about anxiety and depression. Let's talk about this through the lens of anxiety. Yeah. In anxiety, there's typically this sensation, right, of on edge, right? There's something out there like I gotta be ready. I gotta be ready. It's like, I'm not going to do that because, I can't, I gotta be, it's like, there's something that's out to get us. And when we go outside, we actually start to synchronize our brain waves into a lower range of beta, and then also on the cusp of alpha and theta. And we do that because we're designed to entrain our brain waves to the Schumann resonance. The Schumann resonance is this vibration, right, that actually bounces off the surface of the earth to the ionosphere, which is a portion of our atmosphere, and then back again, and just goes back and forth. It's been called like the heartbeat of the earth because it's this continuous pulse, if you will. And it happens at 7.83 hertz. Pull up any brainwave chart, in terms of the different ranges, and you'll see that is alpha right there, low into the alpha. So we're designed for our default is designed to be in this calm, creative state, ready to drop into theta, right? Ready to get into meditation, ready to kind of connect on a more deeper level to consciousness, whatever you want to call it, right? And then when we need to, one harmonic, which would be a doubling of that, one harmonic up would put us in low beta. Low beta is where we are cognitive, we're reactive, we're logical, we're analytical, but we're not designed to be in that state the amount that we are right now. And people aren't actually in that low beta. Low beta is fine. Yeah. We're in high beta. We're in like 30 cycles per second of just like beta, 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 go, go, go. I think, but we're not able to calm it down. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that our internal environments are high frequency, the flicker from the screen, boom, boom, boom.
Flicker. Yeah.
The EMFs are these are in very, very fast pulses of electromagnetic energy that we were not designed to interact with in the way that we currently are. I'm going to guarantee you it's keeping us in high beta. And then the circadian rhythm disruption also comes into play.
We've got Bluetooth and AirPods and all of those things also creating this other dysfunction.
Totally. It absolutely. And not only that, but that radiation that close to the brain is creating mitochondrial dysfunction in and of itself. Right. Exactly. So it's not only changing brainwave states, but it's literally damaging the mitochondria. So it's a vicious cycle and no one realizes it. The number of college age individuals that I've taught and see who, I'm starting to teach this, that I used to teach this stuff to. It's like the default is AirPods, sunglasses, right? And then falling asleep, scrolling on social media.
Yeah. Every night.
Every night. And falling asleep with that phone or AirPods in or that phone right by. I mean, it's
And now
People just,
everyone wants an ADD or ADHD. It's ADHD. Everybody wants an ADHD diagnosis. And I'm like, why do y'all all want to get a diagnosis of this? Like, why? So you can go on medication? That's not going to fix anything. Like, it's not, like I'm not downing medications. And I think sometimes they can save lives. And there's been times in my life where I was so dark in such a bad place that a medication allowed me to get to a place where I could make changes to get off the medications. But so I don't want anyone to get that twisted, but I just get so incredibly frustrated when I see all these people like, well, my ADHD, I have ADHD, or I'm looking to get an ADHD diagnosis. I'm like, why? Why do you want that label? Like, what are you going to do with it? Is you going to go get medication? Like, what? So what Carrie and I are saying is like, here are some things if you are feeling like you need to go get a specific diagnosis, or maybe you even have one, don't go off your medication without medical supervision, please. I've done that before. It's a pretty bad idea. When I did finally come off of all these different medications, I was working with a doctor to taper slowly and do it the right way. But why not try these things, add these things in? There's no negative side effect to it, correct? So Carrie, I don't know about you, but I'm doing a couple little trips this summer. And what is the one thing that you're definitely going to be bringing with you on your packing list?
I love portable red light therapy for sure. Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly.
Yes.
You can't underestimate, honestly, what red light therapy can quote unquote treat or support when you're away from like eating something that disagrees with you to like your kid falls and scrapes the knee and you want to do a little extra repair and support, to a headache, to an earache, to like you name it, and just then as general maintenance, right? Or like, let's say you're at the beach, you want to precondition your skin, right? All these things, and or
you're traveling on an airplane and you want to kind of offset some of that mitochondrial damage that's going to naturally happen from being in a plane. Like I know Dr. Sarah brings her this is our Bond Charge Mini, and you can use the code QuantumPod to save on yours. But I know she will just kind of put it thyroid, right? Because when you're in an airplane, you are exposed to high levels of non-native EMF, and a little panel could be a great way to support your mitochondria to make more exclusion zone water so that there's a little bit of a protective barrier when you're in those high stress environments, right?
Exactly. And then also in a pinch, I'll use that, like, let's say in a hotel room or something, to turn on a light if I need to, right? It's just in a pinch, it's a really good way just kind of almost like act as a flashlight or illuminate the space at night, if you need to for some reason. So I have found so many uses for that portable red light therapy.
Yep. It's awesome. So if you are interested in one of these, you can use the code QuantumPod. This is by Bond Charge. They are sponsoring the podcast. We really appreciate that. And check them out. There's a link down in the show notes.
This is not going to hurt people to try this, because this is actually regulating the body back into homeostasis. A lot of anxiety is just the body isn't able to go back into that homeostasis. So it stays in kind of like this heightened alert of survival threat. Mm-hmm. And if you can say, here's the time of day, here's the Schumann resonance, now it's nighttime, right? If you can send in some key signals, the body can regulate itself and come back to homeostasis. So we don't have to be in this constant state of survival threat, which is really what it is. I mean, POMC gets dysregulated, you drive more and more cortisol. One of the key findings fascinating about depression is how much melatonin is tanked, right? Mm-hmm. And the solution is not supplemental melatonin. This is because of the amount of artificial light that is in your environment at night. It's a direct reflection of that. Your melatonin gets suppressed when you stare at a screen or a TV or a computer or have lots of lights on at night. So there's some key things that you can really do to support this. Now, here's what someone brought this up in my community today. Not everyone is ready, right? It's fascinating because this woman she's taking my practitioner trainings, right? And she's working through with someone, she works with a lot of veterans. And this one veteran, she loaned him her blue blocking glasses because he typically is a night owl, right? Mm-hmm. And she wanted to see if he could get to bed at an appropriate time and, get some restorative sleep. And lots of nervous system dysregulation. And she gave him these blue blockers, and he's like, well, it didn't make me fall asleep any earlier. And then I slept I wanted to sleep all day the next day. And he's like, nighttime is my time for me. It's my alone time. It's my productive time. It's my time for myself. And so if people want to claim an identity to that, right, we can't shift or change that. People have to be ready and willing to say, oh, okay, let me actually hear the signals that my body wants to start to go into a restful state, wants to downregulate, wants to start to go to sleep, right? So someone's got to be ready. And so if you're listening to this for someone else, I'm going to tell you, you can't force it. You can't force it. They have to be ready. We did that whole
episode on, when your friends think you're crazy or your family thinks you're crazy about this stuff, like you can't force anyone to do this stuff.
You can't, because people have to be ready. They absolutely have to be ready.
Want it.
They have to want it. And so what I think was happening with that individual was he ignored sleep signals, right? He ignored them because that was his productive time. It was his me time. And then of course, because he was wearing blue blockers, he made a massive amount of melatonin, probably way more than he had made in quite some time. And his body was trying to like sleep and catch up and restore and repair, which is why he felt like he was needed to sleep all day. But then he missed the light signaling in the morning to kind of wake. I mean, it's just, not a good pattern for him to necessarily get into and reinforce. But at the same time, he wasn't ready. He's not ready for that shift to happen because he doesn't want to go to bed earlier. And so again, I want this information to go out there, but we can't force people yet. So.
No, you can't. You can't force anyone to do this stuff. It has to be you listening to it that wants to make changes for you, not your kids, not your husband, not your cousin, not your brother or sister. It's got to you making change for you. Yeah. And then when you do that, hopefully others in your life see that and want that. And I'm, like I've mentioned a bunch of times, like my family is still not there. And I hope that they can get to that place before it's too late, before something negative happens with their health. But I'm not banking on it. I have to take care of myself and my family, my children, like that's my priority. And I hope that my other family members will get this, but it may not happen. And I just have to resign myself to that and say, well, they know how to get a hold of me when they're ready to make some changes, when the drugs stop working or don't work at all. And they've run out of options, because that's kind of where I got to with trying carnivore, with trying this stuff, is that all the medications were not helping. I got there with drinking alcohol. It wasn't helping. It was ruining my life. And it was like, you're going to basically like die alcoholic death, continue to take more medications or do something different. That's your choices. And nobody could make that choice for me. And yeah, it's tough. It's tough, It's
very tough. Now, here's something that we can potentially, that if you want people to maybe start noticing they're not willing to maybe adopt the circadian lifestyle, but they're willing. I find that people like a device, right? And I do find red light therapy to be so supportive for depression. It's actually been shown in dozens of studies to improve symptoms of depression, major depressive disorder, anxiety. Yeah. I mean, so that being said, it's like, what's fascinating, the reason I learned this, well, number one, Kelly Bento, one of our favorite red light therapy people on the planet, she really turned me onto the research that was being conducted by Mass General Hospital. They've been doing robust red light therapy research, and what was fascinating is that in individuals who are looking to improve symptoms of memory loss or CTE, right? Those are like what we would think would be early CTE. A side benefit was very significant reductions in anxiety and depression. And so these were like side benefits. We've also seen people who had red light therapy done on their knee for like looking at how it can reduce joint pain and joint inflammation. And again, side benefit, lowered scores of anxiety and depression. And so
it works
systemically. That's just it. So if you want to maybe utilize something that can be supportive, I would say red light therapy would be an interesting thing to explore. And can it be Kelly's torch with the little attachment shined up your nose? It absolutely can be. Yep.
Been
Absolutely.
using it on my finger today. And then we got the Bond Charge with the
we got the Bond. That's the thing with the Bond Charge.
I've got my V-Light helmet too.
Right. And so that's the thing, like that Bond Charge, literally you can put it, like I set that thing directly on my abdomen, right? So you can put that where
I put it on here when I'm recording with you. I'll like put it on my low back. And
just get the light in. And so you can do that. And a side benefit too, right? And so because it's supportive of mitochondrial health, that's one of the reasons why, right?
Yep.
And if, as we just talked about, if anxiety and depression have a major component of it as a mitochondrial dysfunction, if we can do some things to help heal the mitochondria, it can go a long way. Yeah. So, that might be an entryway to get some people to maybe get some support with this without doing the full circadian stuff. So that plus blocking the artificial light at night
is huge.
Huge.
And if they want to see like some scientific research on the mental health, Alzheimer's, CTE, V-Light, V-I-L-I,
oh, yeah.
I've got their helmet. And I think my code there is Sarah K, but they have an extensive research portion on their website where they've been doing research on Alzheimer's.
They've been working with MassGen on all this stuff. So it's very, a robust database for sure.
Yeah.
Or just, honestly,
you can just look it up.
Go to people need, it's really important. I think, go to PubMed, easy. Put in the fancy word for red light therapy is photobiomodulation. One word, photobiomodulation. Put in photobiomodulation and depression, anxiety, wound healing, collagen, infertility, right? Like you can just put in, and then you'll microbiome. There's so much. It's a robust database. Yeah. And then also with that, while you're in PubMed, put in artificial light at night
and depression,
anxiety,
Alzheimer's, diabetes, thyroid cancer, prostate cancer, breast cancer. It is there.
It's there.
There is no argument that this is a thing, right? And someone was like, "Oh, it's correlation only." I'm like, when you understand what blue light does to the mitochondria, it is no longer correlative data. It is obvious.
The mitochondria, the hormones,
melatonin. We need melatonin. Like if you don't have melatonin, like you're screwed. You're at way more risk for all of these cancers, right? And metabolic disorders, period. So it's not correlative.
Yeah. If it was correlative to just maybe one or two different things, but literally dozens and dozens of different disorders that we're looking at, more probably, right?
With thousands of studies, like
with thousands of studies. Yeah. So it's to me, there's only so long I can stick my head in the sand before I want to actually dive in and start to recognize certain things. So.
Yeah.
So photobiomodulation can go a long way. Lastly, though, the last thing I want to talk about here and touch on is breathing, because I think this is so underlooked. And this is what I always do a BOLT score now with my clients. For the vast majority of my clients, I do a BOLT score if it's warranted. And that would be a blood oxygen level test to understand how well they tolerate their own carbon dioxide. Because if they have a low carbon dioxide tolerance in their blood, they're more likely to overbreathe. And the pattern of overbreathing mimics if we were under a survival threat in nature, right? I would only overbreathe if I was having to move quickly or get away from something or work on my survival. And especially if we're doing it for all day long, if we're overbreathers all day long. And as we build carbon dioxide tolerance back up, which can be done through various breathwork trainings, there's Buteyko, so there's Patrick McCune, there's the work of James Nestor. That book is great, Breathe. Yeah. I love Erwin LaCour.
Yeah. I had him on. I think we just talked about movement, but we're going to have him on our summit to talk about.
He's going to be on our summit. Sachin is going to be on our summit as well. And Sachin's been
on my channel. Yeah.
Yeah. So some amazing people when it comes to breathwork support. So, so Sachin Patel is another one. So if you think this is a thing, like don't underestimate the rhythm of our breath. Everything's connected. Let's talk nature. When we go outside and we connect to the Earth's geomagnetic pulse, 0.1 hertz that's six cycles per minute, right? 6 cycles per minute is a very healthy breath rate.
Yeah.
Right. That connects to the flow of cerebrospinal. I mean, we talk about this, but people need to realize that we're designed to be entrained to those rhythms. Yep. The other thing with living indoors is there's this thing now called email apnea. Email apnea is people being unaware that they're holding their breath.
Yeah.
Right. While they're checking
this hunched over.
I know.
Compression.
Yeah. We need to talk about like forward head posture as as just a low lying stressor as well. It's another huge thing that I like to talk about, but I don't have time to go into all this stuff today. But all these things, right?
They're contributing depression,
and
anxiety,
low hanging fruit, in my opinion, when it comes to breath, right? The way you breathe, the rhythm of your breath determines so many things in your body. And so you might as well say, well, how am I breathing? Am I breathing mostly through my mouth? Not good. Or my nose. And sometimes people are nose breathers during the day, but mouth breathers at night. So that's another one to pay attention to. Some people don't have any breathing dysfunction during the day, but at night they have apnea, bursts of apnea. I was a mouth breather, over breather. I couldn't tolerate carbon dioxide at all, right? And until I retrained my breath. And again, took a little bit longer to retrain that than circadian rhythm, but I'm talking a couple weeks, right? Until I started to make like noticeable changes in terms of things like my stamina, my sleep, so it didn't take months and months and months on end before I noticed some improvements with this. And again, lots of improvements beyond just my sleep and my stamina in terms of my focus. I always felt like I had to sigh. Just so many really weird things that I noticed went away completely after I was aware of my breathing problems and my breathing mechanics.
Yeah. Huge. Well, I think this has been really good. I don't know. I hope I didn't upset too many people with the ADHD thing. And I know this topic, it continues to come up about being neurodivergent and wired differently. And, obviously I have a child that is not going to ever be like me in many ways. However, I still support her in this way. And, for the most part, I've been able to keep her off of those medications to manage a lot of these things. And, it's a touchy subject. Definitely, because people are very entwined and kind of attached to some of these labels that they've been given. But I do believe that there are ways we can support people, and that needs to really be looked at before we start to suppress and push things down. Because again, when you push something down, something else is going to be impacted in some way.
Right. Or there's some medications like that I've known people who've been on Klonopin and things that just feel like walking zombies, right?
That was one of the ones I was on, and that was the worst withdrawal I've ever had in my life. Jordan Peterson was, hospitalized because of that one. It took about a year before my brain actually felt normal again. And that if that's a drug, I say people please stay off of those like benzos, because if you can help it,
they're the hardest
as a daily long-term, because that's basically what I was on it every single day to just manage my anxiety. And,
it's tough. So tough.
It's so tough. It was really hard to come off of, but I knew at the end of the day that was not the strategy that I wanted to employ for my health,
Totally. Something that I found fascinating, and I know we got to wrap this up in a second here, but I've known some people who have, like you, slowly but surely gotten off of them. And what was beneficial, at least for these individuals, was starting to volunteer. And there is research in depression on doing something outside of yourself that actually improves mood and improves depression scores, quality of life scores. And so, it's just a little something to throw out.
Well, that's why if you look in recovery meetings, that's something I did employ for many years and still dip my toe back in there because I never want to separate from that essentially. But when you do true recovery, you are encouraged to help the new person, to in some way try to encourage the new person, help the new person. Even if you have only a month more of sobriety than they do, you still have hope to share with them that they can get to where, they can get that time. And that's a crucial piece of recovery in that community is the spirit of helping others. And if you can't do that, show up early and clean, go in the parking lot and pick up cigarette butts, go clean the trash up out of the room. And that's basically, it wasn't sexy, but those are the things that I did in order to stop using those substances to cope with life. And it was not easy at all. But I agree. You have to find a way to get out of yourself. For some people, the recovery meetings might be really helpful. For others, it might be, where can I be helpful to someone else in my life, and just getting out of yourself a bit. That could look different for everybody, but I completely agree with that.
Totally. Anything else?
No, I think, we just talk about it so much on the podcast, but I just really don't want people to feel like imprisoned by a diagnosis or a label that someone else has given them,
especially when especially when the vast majority of people have never looked into light to support anxiety, depression, mental health challenges. So it's like, I really think that this is such a low hanging fruit, but it's so powerful. So it's like, I just want to get this information out for people to start to understand that this is a thing. This is something you can have as a tool in your toolbox, and not just maybe a tool, but maybe the tool that feels most supportive for you.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't, like I said, have to, come off all your medications, and you shouldn't try to come off all your medications, but this can be helpful if that is something that you want to do while you're working with your doctor, to really support those neurotransmitters, neurohormones, all of those things that make you feel your best. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I'm excited to chat again next week. Everyone listening, thank you for being here, and we will talk again soon.